Hello, welcome to episode 42 already of our Over the Limit podcast. We're doing back-to-back recordings now in winter time to have some on file because once we start racing again, it's gonna be busy. Today we have a Spanish guest. I think it's our first Spanish guest on the podcast. Another successful driver. We've raced against each other for a couple of years. Currently racing in GTs with us, living a bit the American dream, involved in Formula 1 simulators. Lives in Barcelona. Good friends with Michel and Jules Gounon, which we also had on the podcast, and maybe they gave us some topics to talk about later on. So here we go. Dani Juncadella, welcome to the show.
Thank you,
Welcome.
mate. Thanks, guys. It's a pleasure. I really like podcasts, and I'm a good fan, I would say, of your podcast. I have listened to many of them, not all, but I had a few of them. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
You have some pressure, or you're a bit
Sorry?
stressed? You're a bit stressed?
No, man. This is my daily work, as a
Yeah, maybe tell us you have your own podcast in Spain, right?
Yeah, I have it's more like a Formula One based podcast in Spanish. We talk about mostly F1 stuff that is with no, we don't hold ourselves back too much. So it's me and another ex-racing driver. He used to race in GP2 and he's now TV commentator in F1. So he's a bit more, let's say, reserved, and I go flat out against with all my thoughts. Like I'm just open about it and with respect, obviously, but I like to not contain myself too much, and I think that's what makes it quite popular in a way.
It's a bit our philosophy as well, to just talk and don't think.
It is, but it's like we still talk about ourselves or our employer or our series or teammates. So you still have to kind of hold 5% back. And although we said we never want to, and we still try not to, as you said, if the podcast is getting bigger and bigger, and literally our bosses are listening to it, so you kind of have to say what you think, but with a pinch of salt. Whereas if you talk about something else, you can throw it all out, I guess. And
yeah, but I always believe that if if there is enough respect and you're not disrespecting anybody, or I know that I know what you mean. There's some topics that you have to be careful about, and politics always play a role. But I guess it's easier for me in a way because, well, it's not going to be easier now because now as you just mentioned, I signed with a Formula One team to develop their simulator. I guess I need to be a bit more careful.
Yeah, we'll try to give 99% of what we can say. So, like with every guest, we would like to know more about your career, especially how it started, if it was from family or not from family, and so on. We raced against each other, I think, quite a while in Formula 3, and then again in GT. Chris obviously a bit younger, but yeah, maybe we can start with, did it come from the family business, or you started a tradition, or
Well,
how did it evolve?
it's quite funny because the other day I was actually thinking about this question because I knew you were gonna ask, and I was thinking about the very early days for me. I started quite late when I was 13 in karting, and I remember my dad used to race. He raced only national level, but he was very good. But retired. He stopped quite early because he focused on his business and family. And my uncle from my mother's side raced in Formula One, Luis Perez Sala. He raced for Minardi
Okay.
2 or 3 years. And he actually scored the best result of a Spanish driver until Alonso, which was a 6th place, 1 point. So I do have some sort of family influence on it, but my dad never really pushed for me to race. I did a karting race when I was 8 years old, where we got invited. It was for kids that never raced, and I came third. But a friend of mine actually flipped and was flying around like out of the cart. So my dad said, look, this is a bit dangerous. And I used to do a lot of sports back in the day. I was doing golf, I was doing tennis, I was doing soccer, I was doing skiing, alpine skiing. So I was doing everything. So I didn't really care much. I just did the race. Okay, this is fun, but whatever. And then it was like only 5 years later that I saw in a Spanish newspaper, I saw a guy that was Spanish karting champion on the newspaper. And I remember I beat that guy on that race. So I was like, I want to race. I want to race again. So I started looking at like all the racing. It was the days where we started using internet more freely and like starting to be like more websites and stuff about karting. And I remember I was always looking at pictures of people like the Spanish guys racing in European series and stuff. And I remember you, Lawrence, actually, and Robin, because I was watching the KSP. You remember KSP?
Yeah, all the pictures. Yeah.
So I was watching all the European races and stuff, the guys from my age, and I remember really, really well you and Robin with the GSK design and like that red, yellow, white. And I have just a perfect memory of you both, like similar helmets, like you look like brothers. And Philip,
I hope you mean with the helmet on.
Yeah. And then I remember also Philip Eng, he was like the Red Bull guy in karting already, and Wittmann. And
back then already?
Yeah, he had like a Red Bull helmet. Charles Peak, that was one of the very successful guys in karting as well. And I was looking at you guys, like, wow, I want to be like these guys one day. So I just started when I was 13. And 1 year later, in 2005, I went straight to race in Marguti, all the special Italian races. But I was not very experienced, so I was super quick from the beginning. But I remember I was making so many mistakes. I was looking at like all you guys, like I was like, these guys are so good, and I really struggled at the beginning with like my self-confidence, because I thought you guys came such a lot more experience in karting than myself. So I was, those were the early days. And then I did only 2 years of karting. I didn't really do any big results because I was
only 2 years.
Yeah, it was 3. I mean, 2004, 5, and 6. And then straight after that, I went to Formula BMW in Spain. There was a scholarship kind of championship, and that's when I pretty much started at the same point like everybody else, where I at least I didn't need to catch up on all the experience. And I think that was a good step for me, because in karting I always felt like I lacked those side to side fighting, and I was always just a little bit behind on experience to everybody else, but the speed was there. Those were my early days. And after that, I got invited to do a Red Bull Junior team shootout at the end of 2007, and got the drive to do Formula BMW, which was back in the day was a good series, because it started going with F1 on the same weekends, 2008, 2009. And those were the early days.
Was it still back then? Was it still back then where you also, when you won the Formula BMW, you could get like the prize money to go to the next step?
I think Formula BMW in Europe, there was no big prize money, but there was a world final back in the day that if you won that race, you were getting a Formula One test with a BMW F1 team.
Okay.
But not the European series. Anyway, those days, like for me, was mostly like 50% of it was founded by the Red Bull Junior team. But I only lasted 2 years, because the second year I was vice champion, and Dr. Helmut Marko said, this is not enough. So I was shocked, like, shit, like now I thought like my career was starting to like get to the level that I thought I had, and then I was like a big hit for my confidence again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
And
it's quite.
I remember that's actually after that I just did the step to F3, where I think with you, Lawrence, it was late 2010. You were already there, or not?
I did German Formula 3 in 8 and 9, and then Euro Series in 2010-11 exactly.
Yeah. So
You
10
started
was,
as well in 2010, right?
10 was my first year in F3, which funnily enough, I had just been dropped from the Red Bull Junior team. So I was like, okay, I'm not good enough, I guess. And found like a sponsor through family, which was very random because
Was
they
Astana, no?
yeah.
Yeah, I
My
remember because I
brother,
always went to watch the races. The
yeah,
blue car.
yeah, my brother made like a really good one there because he basically met these guys from Kazakhstan that they were basically all the sports sponsorship they had was the cycling team. But they really loved racing, and they bought a house in Costa Brava, close to Barcelona, that used to belong to my family, to my grandfather, many years ago. So he met them once, and he said, "Oh, my brother races in cars. He's very good. Maybe you would be interested one day in sponsoring him." But he didn't fully ask for a sponsorship. He said, "Look, we're gonna paint the whole car. You're not gonna spend any money on it, and if you like it during the season, then you can pay the next year." So 2011. So we did that, and my father founded that year. But back in the day, it was not as expensive as it is today. I remember the budget was like 450,000, and I had already 150 sponsored from Spanish Federation and the Spanish circuit of Barcelona. So it costed 300 to my dad, and then hoping that the next year would be free. And it worked out pretty well because that was a year that we were like only 12 drivers, but it was high quality, but we were just like a very small field. And actually, I raced with Prema because back in those days, ART was the number one team, but Prema was like the B team, was the cheaper deal. But it turned out to be a super team. Like my first race, I was on pole. I remember this was in Paul Ricard, my first ever F3 race. I was on pole. I didn't even know how I put it on pole. With all these big names, Mortara, Bottas, Wittmann, yourself, Harry, Acosta. Like I was like, okay, I just been dropped from Red Bull Junior team, so maybe I'm not that bad. And it worked out pretty okay. And then 11 they paid the full season, and 12 again. So that's how the ball started rolling again.
Yeah, because in the end you spent 4 years in Formula 3, right?
3.
3. I thought 4.
Yeah, 11. It's when was my second year, and your second in Euro Series, I guess, as well, which was when Mercedes, we were more competitive. I remember that year.
So when Mary won the championship, no?
Yeah. And I learned all the dirty things from the man himself, Roberto.
We should get him on the podcast as well. That would be funny.
My God, yeah. I mean, this guy, he was super fast, but he was especially very good at like getting away with being a bit dirty on track and not getting penalties, and that was like the thing that I struggled the most, because from the karting days, he learned how to like be a bit of a bastard, and you needed to be. And and then that was my second year, and that's when actually that was like I would say the turning point in my career, because then I ended up winning the Macau Grand Prix that year, which was a bit of a messy one with the start, the big shunt. You stalled at the start, or you crashed at the start?
I
stalled at the start, and
I crashed into Murray because he stalled. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and that weekend was.
You couldn't avoid him?
But when you were doing Formula, you were always starting last, so you could see everybody in front of you. It was easy.
That's not true.
Second,
no, but I remember that was a bit of a weird start, because they switched on the 5 lights, so one by one, and after the 5th light, they turned it off straight away. It was a super fast. And back in the day, we had this handbrake. It was quite hard. You had to like put a lot of strength to, so it was not easy to start. And yeah, winning the Macau Grand Prix for me was like a turning point, because like I said, like the beginning of my career, something that stood out for me in a negative way is that I always had quite low confidence in myself. And I always saw the others like, wow, this guy, this big name, he's very good and I'm not as good. And winning that race, which was in a way a bit of a lucky one because I don't know if you remember how it went, but Pittman was leading by 4 seconds or so to me and myself and Nasser. And there was like 5 laps to go. And I was like, okay, second, like it's not bad. It is what it is, but I'm never going to catch him. And he was faster. And then there was a crash and there was a safety car. So we restarted and back in the day, the slipstream effect was incredible with those cars.
That's how I lost my victory to Mortara. I think there was a year before.
Yeah.
As well, I was leading with a reasonable margin, safety car, then messed up the restart and Mortara.
Yeah, but you were probably, I mean, you were basically a passenger. Wittmann went from lead to 5th at that restart. I remember that I had to prepare where I wanted to go. Like after turn 1 in Macau, I was lifting to not overtake before Mandarin, because if you would go flat out, you would pass before Mandarin. So I was waiting, like lifting. Okay, now flat, and he got passed by 4 cars, and he didn't do anything wrong. I remember even like, you know, when the leader makes the gap to the safety car and tries to surprise the guy in P2.
Yeah,
I didn't even react to him going. Like he had 3 car lengths because you didn't need to. There was such a big extreme effect. And yeah, that was like, for me, that was my turning point where I realized, okay, maybe I can make something big in motorsport, because back in the day, winning Macau was like,
big.
Yeah. Even coming
one thing from, because I feel like if we have, it's a good point you touched on, if we have people, younger listeners, or you were lacking confidence and you felt like you saw the others having all the confidence. I had that too when I was young. But I feel and I know now, like, everybody has that feeling, or often or sometimes has that feeling that they lack the confidence, but you think the others don't have it. But in the end, everybody has it, or some has some more, some show it more, some show it less. Some play the opposite, showing that they have the confidence, but they actually don't at all. So it's, by now, I think, I don't know how you see it, but it feels like it's normal. But then when you were young, you would worry about it, obviously. Or how do you see it?
I think, I guess you're right. Like, this is something with you learn with time, that you actually see some guys that you would think this guy is overconfident, and then at certain moments you realize everybody has its down times. Like for me, I felt like it was something that I would need to work on when the day comes. It took me a while to really understand it, because I remember my team owner in karting, that he was like the guy that discovered Alonso back in the day. He told my dad one day, the day that Dani believes in himself, he will be very good. But right now, so it's something that in the end, it also stood in the back of my head, like always, because from a very early age and the early days in my racing career, I was always like, okay, lacking that confidence, and something that is sometimes drivers don't speak about so much. But in my case, since 2018, which is quite late in my career, I started working with like a sports psychologist and focused on these things. And that also was like a big turning point in my career, because I feel like my career has been a bit up and down in many, many years. Like after those successful years in F3, I decided to go the way of DTM, and DTM also destroyed my career in a way with all the politics. I never really understood why some decisions were taken in a way or the other. And for 5 years, I had no results. So you all both know, like, you can be very good, you can do good in many aspects, but if the results are not coming, it just breaks you. So then when I started working with the sports psychologist, again, it changed a lot my perception of how to deal with like lack of confidence or anything else.
I think it's
Yeah.
the most underrated aspect, almost
In any
the
sport.
mental aspect. That, I mean, me too. I have no problem. I work with a mental coach as well. I did it in Formatrina time, then I stopped, and then since a couple of years I started doing it again. I was like, why did I do this
Mm.
the whole time? Because you can be as fit as you want or as prepared as you want, but you're, especially, I mean, in all sports, but motorsports, I feel like sometimes even a touch more, because there's so many things not in your control or from the outside, that it has all the influence in the world almost to the way you think and see things. So,
Everybody's a bit different in this. I think we are also I mean, us two are also very, very different in this. But I think
Yeah.
everybody has this. Everybody. I mean, a guy is a funny example, but we all know him. Robin, for example, he always feels like he's having a lovely time and doesn't think about anything. But for sure, he also. I mean, everybody has
absolutely.
this. I
So
also
I
have
said
this.
there's a lot of guys who put on the poker face and pretend that they always are confident and they always feel good, but believe me, they're not. They just don't speak about it and just don't show it.
And in the end, with experience, you realize what works for you, and what works for you doesn't necessarily work for someone else. Like, it's the same for you both. Like, when I see you both, in terms of, I don't really know exactly, but from outside, it looks like Lawrence is so careful and so precise about his physical preparation, probably the mental as well. And Dries, you look more like laid over, and like you're not training as like, probably Lawrence is doing more than what he needs for racing, because I know I do that myself too. But it works for you and it works for Lawrence, and it's opposite. And it's the same for Robin. It's the best example. He's like super talented, but you will never see him with 3 tennis balls warming up before jumping in the car. And it's the same for me as well. Like, I started focusing on many other aspects that I could work on, but I also tried a couple of years ago warming up with the lights and with the tennis balls and stuff. And at some point I said, look, this is too much. Like, it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, everybody has to find his own way.
Yeah, I had this as well when I started. I mean, in go-karts, I had a bit of a similar than you, Dani. I was not too bad always in practice, but I always screwed up the race or the qualifying because I had made myself so much pressure. And then I started to do things like listen to music or whatever, and then I start doing this, and then for a small time they started to work. But then I was like, what the fuck am I actually doing? I'm like listening to music the whole time, and I'm going to the grid with my headphones. I'm like such a Billy. So then I stopped all of that, and then as soon as the click happens and you understand everything, then you know what you have to do. But it's everybody indeed takes it different. ONC loves to sit by himself in the corner and wait.
Yeah, but it's like Dani says. I mean, I know that I probably train too much for motorsports or could say or whatever, but that's my way of doing it, and that actually gives me confidence, knowing that I've done all those, that I'm ready, that's not going to be the issue, that I feel well and the best prepares. Like, yeah, it's probably a more exhausting way than but you mean, like, say, everyone has his own route, and this you have to find, like you said, over years with age and experience and so on.
Yep.
And then after the F3, you went to GP3. How was that? Because I think that was a new championship as well, no? The GP3.
No, I only did a couple of races of GP3 together with my F3 years, because they had a rule in the FIA that they had to have 3 cars per team. And one of the teams, Tech 1 Racing, a French team, they lost a driver last minute. So they called me to fill out that seat and like just pay the tires, the cost basically. And I did a couple of races, but mostly I was doing F3, and I was meant to do GP2 in 2013, because I just in 2012 I won it was my 3rd year in F3 and won the Euro Series, and did a test in GP2, which was everything was looking like it was going forward. My sponsor Astana were gonna finance the 1.2 million or so that GP2 costed, but to be fair, like the sponsor was a bit dodgy in a way that they were always late with payments. Sometimes my dad had to pay in advance and then get it in return. So when it's 300,000 or 200,000, okay, you can find a way. But when it starts to be over 1 million, you worry. And luckily, I come from a quite a wealthy family, and he could take over those costs in a way, knowing that it's gonna come back. But when it's 1.2 million, it starts to be a bit more painful. And since I was a Mercedes junior in F3, they offered me the DTM drive for 2013. And it was in December 2012 when I had the offer to do DTM, and I had the seat for GP2 already fixed with Rapax, Italian team. But the money wasn't coming, so we were worried, and I took the DTM seat. If I could go back in time, like now it's very easy to say. Like I don't regret any of the decisions I've made, but if now I could make a switch and go back, I would definitely take the GP2 drive. Because that year in 13, it was actually very, very strong for Rapax, the team I was raced with. It was Stefano Coletti, who's a driver that in the end, he didn't continue his career and he never turned professional, but he was vice champion. And I was going to be his teammate. And I remember like, I felt I could definitely be stronger. And as a rookie, I think I had a shot at doing a good result. I remember he won the first race of the year, and I was watching thinking, shit, I made the wrong decision. I'm in DTM now, following rules to let my number one guy, Gary Paffett, let him pass. And I'm thinking, what am I doing?
Yeah, it seems like a lot of drivers on the paddock regret their DTM career.
Really, it's crazy. We had a podcast with Mike who did it for 15 years, and he said, well, it was okay. He had a successful season. He had a few, but also a lot he did not, fortunately. But everybody looks at it disliked. I mean, I don't understand. Also, I know Robin did it, and he didn't really like it. He liked it, but it really just, I don't know. It looks like it depends how good you lick the balls. You get the best car, and you're the guy. I don't know how it works, but
for me, it destroyed my career in a way. Like in the end, now like I'm really happy where I am right now. But those 5-6 years, I really, really struggled because those were also the days where I was a reserve driver for Silvia in Formula One, and I ended up crashing in a free practice because I was just destroyed. I could not deal with it. Now when I hear the word DTM, I'm already like panicking. Like don't even want to hear because it's just, and I can't really tell if BMW, Audi, Mercedes back in the day, what's worse, what's more political. I don't know, but with Mercedes, it was hard. It was very hard because I felt I was never gonna be given the chance, and it's not really true. Like for sure, like you would get the chance, but I believed that myself when I was there. And if you have a thought that is just negative, and it's never gonna go away.
You go into spiral, and then
so yeah.
But it's. I mean, I really would like to understand how it works or why, because I mean, you're not the only one.
You had to always, one guy who could win the race, and all the others had to work for him and do pit stops earlier to block others, and so on. Get less good parts, so you had to be a fucking rock star to still be able to even show yourself, I guess. And after some time or after some races, it takes a toll. I can imagine.
I just want is it then after the first race it gets decided, or is it already decided before the season starts? Or?
I'll give you the best example, which is my first year in DTM. It was 2013. So I was going to be racing with Muke Motorsport, which was like the P team, but they had support from HWA, which was the number one team, but we were the B team basically, and it was going to be me and Ralf Schumacher. But we went testing in pre-season, and I think Ralf was a bit off, like he was like 5-6 tenths off, and you could see that he didn't really care so much anymore. He was demoted from the number one team, and he was just going to be together with me. And he said, before the season started, he said, look, I don't feel like I want to continue racing. I'm going to stop. So they're like, oh, we are missing a driver. And Verline, who was in his second year in Formula 3 Euro Series as a Mercedes Junior. Had just done the first race of the season in Monza, and he was leading the championship, but just one race. They promoted him to the DTM drive straight away. And I had been fighting against him the previous year in F3, and we didn't like each other. We crashed twice into each other, and I could not stand him, and he could not stand me as well. So we were going to be teammates, and we're like, okay. So we go to Macau Motorsport, and we do like a team building day together in somewhere in Germany, in a boat in like a lake, together with the team owner, team manager, the engineers. And we get along a little bit, and this is just before the first race week, and Verlaine just did one test, but he was flying. He was super quick. And they said to us, well, the target for this year is probably around P15, P14. And we are looking at each other like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I've just won F3. The kid is like in his second year leading F3. Like, why do we need to target P14, P15? And it's like, yeah, and out of 20 cars. So first race weekend, we both qualify, I think, P5, P7. And we were super quick, but we were always going to be working for the top guy, which was Gary Buffett back in the day. And there was one race in Norrisring, which was incredible, because back in the day, DTM had this qualifying format, which was Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Q1 was the top. So from 22 cars, 16 were going through, and Q2, 10 cars were going through, and Q3, there was the top 4 going forward to Q4, and then there was like a one-lap shootout with the top 4. So in Norrisring, we made Q1 easily. We were very quick. All the Mercedes were quick, and me and Pascal were fast. So we made Q1, we made Q2, and then it's Q3, and it's 10 cars. And Gary Buffett was in the hunt for the championship. It was still early days, like 4th race of the year. And I remember Verlaine was on I think Buffett was P4, and Verlaine was on a purple sector 2 or something like that. And then opened the radio. Box, we have no fuel, you need to box. We're going to be disqualified. And he didn't finish the lap because he was going to probably go into Q4 and going to drop Buffett to stay in P5. So they boxed him, and he finished, I think, P5, and I was P8. So this was like one example. And the next day...
I didn't know it was that bad.
But back in the day, it was this, like, the next day was even worse, because I remember we had 2 tires, like the soft compound and the hard compound, and we had to do 2 pit stops at least, mandatory, and you had to use both compounds. And Norrisring, because there was like there was no deck, the softer compound was the best, and you could basically keep it for nearly the whole race. So you just had to use the hard one for a bit at some point, and that's it. And I think I had a contact with someone at the start, and I dropped from 8th to 12th or 13th, and pitted in lap 1 to check the car, and we put the hard compound, and then there was a safety car, and I was last, and we pitted a second time to put the soft one again, and I was last, and I had like 70 laps, and they said, let's gamble and just do the whole race on this set of tires. You already did your 2 stops. And I was just driving around trying to keep the tires. And at some point I was P2. And who was in the lead? Gary Buffett. And he was on the hard tire because they messed the strategy, and I was catching him like 3/10 per lap. And at some point I'm in his ass, and I'm like, okay. So I opened the radio and I asked, like, what do we do now? And they said to me, defend your teammate. Because they couldn't really say stay behind, because there was like these rules So they said protect your teammate. And I looked in the mirror, there was nobody behind. So then I was just driving behind, thinking I could just remove the radio, overtake the guy, win my first DTM race ever, be a hero for today, but I guess in the long term it's not going to pay off. And I could see the Audis, the BMW starting to come. Mortara catches me. No, someone else. I think it was Bruno, somebody else, BMW caught me, overtook Buffett, started going away, and then Mortara arrives, overtakes me, and then they start fighting like crazy with Buffett, and Buffett decides to, well, they hit a bit, and Mortara plays it a bit dirty with Buffett, and then the next corner, Buffett just completely drills him. Like they both massive shunt and out of the race. And I'm sitting there thinking, this guy, I've just stayed behind for 20 laps, and I'm throwing away my own win, and he just shunted with the guy for nothing because he was pissed off and something. And I ended up finishing fourth, and this was the race that Ekstrom won, and they threw the water in the suit, and the father threw some water in his suit, and he got disqualified because they said he was underweight, and without the water he would have been underweight or something like that. But I mean, this just shows you like the level of control they had over us.
That's bad. I couldn't do it. I mean, I was always, when I was at Audi, I was always against, well, not against, I never really even asked for the DTM story. And then, even though I did it 2-3 years ago and it wasn't really the same DTM, even that I didn't proper enjoy. So I'm happy that I never thought about taking that route.
And the thing is, you never learned. At least Mercedes back in the day, the guy that was leading the whole project, he was making the decisions for everything. Also in terms of setup, we were not told about nothing on the car. All my DTM years back in the day, I did not learn a single thing technical wise about the car. Nothing, because I had no clue. I was not meant to know what was in the car. And in the end, that's you're paying a big toll for the next years of your career.
I would not be able to cope with this. I would do it and then see how it goes at the end of the tunnel. See what is waiting for me.
That's easy to say now in the end.
Yeah, true. Because for sure you will get in big problem, but
one race, Verlaine, this one. Let me explain this one, because this one is incredible.
There's so many stories. It's such a joke, this thing.
So they completely screwed the strategy for Buffett, who was the main guy again, and it was a rainy race in Nürburgring, like one of those races, typical Nürburgring weather, where it's raining, it stops raining, and they always made the wrong call on Buffett on tires. So they pitted him for dry, it started raining. They pitted him for wet, it started drying out. And at one point, he was on slicks in the rain, and Verlaine was behind him on wets, and they said, stay behind. And and there were cars passing both of them, left and right. It was so dumb. You could see on TV, Verlaine was just sitting behind, driving like 15 seconds off.
No way.
And just stayed behind.
That's next level. Anyhow, spend enough minutes on DTM of our life.
Enough. Yeah.
After DTM, I think you went to GT racing, which you're still active on today. You spent a lot of years with Mercedes. Now I think you moved on and you're living a bit more the American dream with Corvette and WEC and IMSA, if I'm correct. You've won many races, as we can see. But besides that, you always, or also active, as you mentioned, you're very good on the simulator, as we can see behind you, and you've also now been announced as a Formula 1 simulator driver for Aston Martin. I think a lot of us, even including myself, don't really know 100% how that works, how that job description is. Obviously simulator, but it's more than that. Maybe you can explain us the background of that part of your job.
Yeah, since COVID, I was very active in COVID in the sim, because that's when I kind of lost the drive in DTM with Aston Martin, because they stopped the program because of the issues the team had, and I was left without a drive, and that's when my GT career started again with Mercedes. The relationship started again. So I spent a lot of time on the sim and trying to optimize everything in those days that all the racing drivers were taking time to race online. So I wanted to make sure that I could, make a point that I still had like a lot in me, and that helped to raise some interest from, in this case, Formula One teams to develop their sim. And I was doing, actually not officially, but I was doing it sort of like a freelance with McLaren F1.
Okay.
Because they have two main guys, which is Will Stevens and Oliver Turvey, and they needed sometimes some other guys on short notice to like come for some race supports and stuff in the sim. And I was doing that for the last 3 years, but not very actively. I was just doing like 8 to 10 days a year. And this year, after the McLaren success, and after doing a little bit more, I tried to get a role in the team, but they basically still wanted to just have their two guys, and they didn't want to extend their drivers there. They wanted to have like sort of freelancers. So I looked around, and I have a very good relationship with Aston Martin F1. I know Lance very well, and Fernando, obviously. So, and knowing that they struggle with their car, the team is in probably one of their toughest moments in terms of results. So also in the sense of simulator, they didn't have a strong simulator or something they could rely on. I think nowadays Formula One simulators are really advanced in a way that because everything is so limited, they try to use as much as possible to develop the car and support the race team with it. And Aston built a new sim, which is, in terms of hardware, is really incredible. Like, it's a massive room with 350 screens around, Formula One chassis, very advanced. But in terms of software, they were still behind. And yeah, that's why they wanted someone with the experience of a top team, in this case McLaren, to help them develop it. And my job basically is to try to make the simulator as close to reality as possible. And for that, I also get the chance to drive the Formula One car. I will do 3 test days, which in the end, that's what's fun for me. And
yeah, for sure.
You both know that simulator is fun for 1 hour, 2 hours, but then it starts being a bit repetitive. And yeah, I will get the chance to drive the actual car and do three test days with that. And we are basically gonna try to correlate that as best as possible. For example, my first test is gonna be in February, and I will be in the sim for a full day, go to the test, drive the car, and then come back to the sim. Okay. Because what the problem they have now is that their race drivers, they don't want to go in the sim, because they say, especially a guy like Fernando Alonso, he's more of a old style kind of guy that is not coming from the era of the simulators like myself or like the younger guys. And he's like, why am I gonna go to the sim if I don't get the feeling that the car gives me? And it's not related to what it actually feels. So basically, easily to explain, my job is to make sure that the car is as close as possible to the simulator. And it's never going to be perfect, but I think I can give proper feedback on what things I can.
How many days a year is that? Are you spending on that?
I will do 40 days, which is quite a lot. And that's also one of the reasons why for 2025, you will not see me doing races with Mercedes. 24, I did still some races with AMG, because Corvette isn't racing in Bathurst, Macau, Nürburgring, Spa yet, and it's not planned in the short term. So I was still trying to do some races with AMG, because you guys know, like, it's some of those big races we always want to keep racing there.
Sure.
But I will not be doing or racing with AMG, because this Aston Martin F1 thing is just going to take quite some time from myself. So I will focus mainly on WEC, 3 big IMSA races, and this simulator.
Do you feel you get the chance to drive the actual car? I think I would like to do it as well once, but it's pretty cool. I mean, you did it already in the past, so you know, but I think nowadays it got so further in developing everything that it's pretty cool.
I think my neck is not ready for that.
Yeah. You need to put those pads on that you can keep it.
Apparently it's a joke, the neck in the F1.
Yeah.
I
I
was
can
reading
imagine if you see Qatar, you see the G's they took for all the last sector. It's
No, I mean,
Which track you gonna drive?
already.
You know already?
Sorry?
You know which track you're gonna test already?
First test is Barcelona.
Ooh, turn 3.
I mean, there's not a lot of low speed in Barcelona. Everything is.
But it does sound fun. I mean, it's one of my bucket list things one day is to drive a Formula One car over the last years. But do you think that your sim, because it's standing behind you, and I'm not a huge sim fan, but I indeed see all the younger generations, like at Porsche, Achan Guven or Lauren Heinrich, spending a lot of time on it, and like for example, Macau, you see him coming, and straight away he's on the pace. Nobody can tell if it's because of a sim or because of what he ate the night before. But do you think your sim at home, in your opinion, helps you a lot on your daily races, not Formula One related, but your GT commitments or whatever it might be? Besides, if you have to learn a new track, let's say.
Yeah. I think it does help, but you need to really enjoy it, and I don't think you need to take it as specifically as a preparation for your racing, but rather as a complementary thing, but that you do it because you love sim racing or because you enjoy sim racing. That's what I see with Max Verstappen, because I'm part of the Team Red Line that is owned basically by him. And when you see the time he spends on the sim, it's absurd. The guy doesn't have a life. Like, he's just racing Formula One and racing in the sim. That's it. And he spends absurd amounts of time.
Yep.
And he's very good. I would confidently say he's the best driver in the world right now. And when you see his abilities on track, the few mistakes he makes, how he maximizes his like difficult moments in F1, I think a lot of that is given by his desire for competition and like being perfect, like close to perfect. And I think racing in iRacing, which is for me the biggest platform right now, and doing races and developing a setup and like improving yourself, it helps. But you have to really enjoy it. And the last few years, I haven't had the time to you can see the sim, but you cannot see it, but there's no steering wheel right now. So, the last few years, I haven't spent much time on it, but I do want to get back to it because I feel like in terms of consistency and like maximizing everything, it gives you a bit of an extra edge. But on the other hand, you need to spend a lot of time on the sim to
be good at it.
Yeah, because it's more like a muscle memory kind of driving rather than...
And then compared to real life.
Yeah, it's so close to perfection in the sim, and real life is so far, in fact, to perfection. Like when you do a perfect lap in real life, or you feel like you've done a perfect lap, it happens like it doesn't happen very often. Like there's always mistakes here and there. In the sim, if there is mistakes here and there, you're nowhere.
Yeah.
So you have to like be perfect, and like they train that feeling so often, and that's why I feel like when they come to real racing, like some guys like Lauren or Ian Chan, they're quite fast straight away because there's more room for mistakes in racing than like, I don't know. I feel like it's a superb tool, but you have to really enjoy it. And
that's a bit my problem is not the right word, but the thing with sim racing, indeed, you have to do, or you can do, laps 24/7, and the more you do, the better you get, plus minus. But if that would be the case tomorrow in real life racing, I wouldn't enjoy that neither. I wouldn't mind seeing racing like NASCAR, 30-minute practice, 50-minute qualifying, let's go racing. Like just go out and straight away feel the limit, which might be then 5% off the theoretical what you can do, but it's the same for everyone. And
it's quite simple. If you imagine now you spend the 24-hour Le Mans weekend and you do only yourself, you're allowed to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. 5 long runs every day, and then you go to the race, do you think you will perform better? Then you will surely perform better. Because
probably, but I wouldn't enjoy it more.
No, for sure. But and that myself as well. Like I don't think I'm as obsessed as Max Verstappen. Max would do it. He would do it. But he's one of a kind. Like he's just, the guy is obsessed and like he's crazy with it, and it works for him. But it doesn't mean that it works for everybody else.
No, it's true.
And for me, that's also the case. Like now, I go in the sim. I want to be as competitive as him. I jump in the sim after months out of the sim, and I'm 5/10 off. And I'm like, there's no way something's wrong. Like my sim is, something is shit. And I upgrade my stuff again because it cannot be. But it's just it feels like a different sport. But I think it helps if you have the patience to spend the time and like enjoy it. But if not, like,
let's see if he still does that much if he gets his kid. But, probably, yeah.
Still, I think the boss is him. So,
sure. So apparently, let's come to the funny stuff. There's we hear the story about Jules in, I think it was Road America, about you guys getting in trouble. Let's hear your version of it for those who didn't hear the Jules Gounon episode. It was all Jules' fault. We can agree on that, but you can blame it on him.
I mean, no, I think
yeah.
I caused it because I basically, so for the people who didn't hear Jules' episode, quite to be quite quickly and straight to the point, he drew penis in a Michelin man in the bib, in a, what was it, like in this autograph session in IMSA. Basically, like that whole year, me and Jules were together. We were bored that weekend because the POP was not good and he was very negative, and we're like playing golf after the days on track, and like we're looking forward to go to play 9 holes of golf. And we're sitting there and the Michelin bib comes around and I'm sitting next to Jules and I'm like, hey Jules, and I draw a really small penis on the side. And we're like, oh, so funny, like stupid joke. Sure. And then the peep comes in the middle, takes a picture with both of us. And while the photograph of Michelin, the official photograph of Michelin is taking the picture, Jules decides the best idea is to draw a giant penis in the middle, basically where the penis would be. And obviously the guy from Michelin that is in front of him looks at Jules and he's like, what are you doing? Going crazy. And we're laughing, but I'm already thinking this is going to backfire massively.
They were not laughing.
No, not at all. They took the bib away, and because they couldn't clean it, of course. So it
will be strange if they start to clean it.
Yeah, it didn't work at all. And then Jules went with a mechanic to Michelin trying to clean it, and it didn't go away. So and they're like panicking, like this suit costs so much money, you cannot do this. And anyway, we leave the track and we go play golf, and we're playing terribly because I'm also going on my mind thinking this is not going to end up properly. And Jules is pissed off like hell. And then he receives a message, John Dunan wants you tomorrow at 6:30 a.m. In his office. And here we go. And that was around the time where I was about to sign my contract with Corvette. And you know how these things go in the US, like these things that you have to be very careful. Like it can be funny in a way, but then on the other hand, it can be
everybody
tricky.
has to be politically correct nowadays.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, so I was a bit worried because I thought if this story comes out, like maybe someone from GM would say, we don't want this guy in our team. And I was just like, I was receiving my contract like straight away. So then when Jules gets told, I'm like, Jules, just don't say that, draw the other one, because it was very small, but for sure, like that if we need to do something, like I will if you need to do some work or something, I will do it as well. If you need to, like, and he's like, worry, bro, like, I will not say that you did anything. And then he got massively in trouble. They wanted to disqualify us from the race weekend, and he got a big fine, which in the end, obviously, we shared. But in the end, the story was fine. Like, and when I told the story to back in, like, I think a few months later, my boss at Corvette found out, and she made a joke about it, like, on WhatsApp, and I was like, "How do you know?" Let me find it. Actually, it was funny because I was like, "Oh," but they took it very well because, like, I mean, in the end,
that's a bit the problem nowadays. If you go back 20, 30 years ago, everybody would have laughed about it. You would have maybe said, hey, that's not a good idea. But now everybody seems to be needed to be, even though, let's say, you agree now that it might not have been the smartest idea, but I think we've all done those kind of things. But yeah, like you said, there's always now the risk that if one guy decides to punish you, then everybody needs to follow to punish you as well, let's say. So
So I got a message from my boss. It's a woman. She said, "I've been told you paid for half of Gounon's dick because he says you are a lovely man. I knew we hired a stand-up guy." And my phone dropped. Like, I was like, what?
Well, it seems you're at a good place then.
Yeah, that's something that actually is very cool about Corvette. I feel like emotional intelligence is 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys know, coming from a German brand, and not to disrespect anybody, but emotional intelligence is not one of the strengths.
Yeah.
No, we had that conversation with Mike as well a couple of days ago. He's saying that, in general, the American way or American teams is a bit more, less, politics are everywhere, but a bit more,
he was
friendly, or how you call it, or whatever.
He was a Corvette driver back in the day. And I actually, when I was about to sign my, I think it was even Road America, I had a chat with Mike. I asked him, like, what do you think of Corvette? And he said, man, go for it straight away, eyes closed. And I mean, for sure, like, it's always easy when you're leaving a brand and going to another one. You always think the grass is greener on the other side. But there is always things, like, there's always bits here and there. But I think in that sense, like, I enjoy a lot the mood in Corvette.
It looks like a nice environment. Everybody's happy. I think your boss is also, she looks like a very nice person. I think it looks good fun.
Yeah.
So we go to the question that you have for us. I mean, normally we try to.
One.
Are you still at a gossip?
Yeah. Apparently, when you're stressed out or there's a difficult situation, you start to forget the language and speak in Spanish, or there's been a big craze where you panicked and instead of speaking in English on the radio, you spoke in Spanish for a minute trying to explain what was going on.
No, but this was, who said that? Jules?
Michel? I have no idea.
Okay. No, this was great. This is one of the greatest stories. No, this was in when we won Spa 24 hours. I think 1 a.m., 2 a.m., Marcello comes in. I jump in the car. We obviously had a different, we had the same seat, but we had different pedal positions. So I moved the pedals backwards to myself. And when I pulled the handle, I broke it. And so I just pulled out of the box and I realized the handle is loose. So the pedals were moving forward and backwards. And so I accelerated, they moved forward, but I was still in the pits and I was like thinking, what's wrong? But I did camel straight and I arrived to Lecom, and when I lifted, the pedals came all the way to myself, then I braked and they went forward. So it was like really undrivable because I couldn't really understand what was going on, and I could not hold it anywhere. And so I was like, okay, I did 2 corners, and I was like, I cannot drive like this. But then 20 seconds later, full course yellow. So I'm in full course yellow, driving at 60 or 80, whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, the pedals are moving and I have a problem. So I started panicking on the radio, like, what's going on? Like, I cannot, like, the handle is broken and like the pedals are not fixed. I have an issue, and they didn't understand. It's a French team. So the French engineer his English was also not perfect. So we're like, and then at some point they had a Spanish support. Well, no, they had a French support engineer that spoke Spanish. So we started speaking in Spanish, and I'm like telling him, this is not working, this and that. And he's like, just hit the pedal box. And I started hitting like hell. This obviously driving at 60, luckily. So we were lucky in that sense and it didn't work. And then like, this is why I feel that year we won, just the luck of the winner, because I think 1 minute later it went red flag. And if that wouldn't have happened, our race was surely over, because I don't think I could have done a full stint like that, and we would have never been able to repair the pedal box at that time. So it was lucky because we got straight away a red flag, stopped the race, we repaired the pedal box, we kept it in a fixed position, and that's it. But yeah, I mean, I don't agree with whoever told you this story, because my panic was, obviously I panicked, but I knew there was a guy speaking in Spanish, and I asked for him. I said, because we were not understanding each other, and I was like, give me the Spanish speaking guy, because I'm going to tell him what's going on.
Okay, still a good story.
No, actually, my question was very easy for you guys, because I want to understand, like, what do you like? I know what Lawrence focuses on his prep, but why is your preparation physically so different? What do you think is the positives of one and the other? Like, do you feel like, Dries, in your case, that you're new to hypercar, do you feel you need to come closer to the physical preparation your brother is doing, or you feel like it's not needed for you?
No, I mean, I'm at the end, I'm still happy how I'm doing it. I just actually did start to do a bit more training, but just because I would like to do myself.
I see you're wearing a Garmin, which is already a big surprise.
Yeah, I bought it yesterday.
It's just for fun, for the looks. He actually has 3 or 4 Garmins laying at those. Each time he says he's going to start training, he buys a new one, and then 2 weeks later he stops.
No, but it's not that I would like to, that I'm trying to now increase the level because of hypercar. But yeah, I just like the way I'm doing it. I don't do so much. Maybe I don't do enough, but I feel like I do enough. I have my way of doing it. And if it's in GT or in hypercars, it actually doesn't really matter. The only thing in hypercar, when it's really hot, then it was very difficult. But at the end, it all works. Like for the neck and stuff, I'm not really struggling. So I don't feel like I have to now increase my training for hypercar, because maybe it will be different because I will do IMSA next year, and those tracks are normally a bit more rough there, let's say. So that could be something, but at the moment, I'm not really scared of that, let's say. But could be, then I have a problem, but I think I'm fine.
And for you, Lawrence, you felt any time that you are doing too much for your racing? Like, have you ever had the feeling going in a race weekend and thinking, oh, I am a bit tired, or I'm...
Yeah. It's actually the difficult part, because if I would not race tomorrow, I would probably train even more. Either it be biking or the gym. But I do the training because obviously I want to be fit and I want to race, but I know that the level I have now is more than enough. Although you could say you're never fit enough. The limiting factor there for me is fitting it in the calendar. If taking consideration that you travel, you have a lot of jet lag, you spend night in hotels, and I think if you take a sport like cycling, cyclists, they are constantly overtrained in a way, and their head or focus needs to be fresh, but I would say it's less important than the mind in motorsport in terms of concentration. And I do think in terms of concentration and mindset, you need to be well rested. This is something I kind of learned over the years, that often when I was doing too much, indeed I was coming to a race a bit like sloggy or sleepy, but the issue is I say myself that every winter, like, okay, this year, just do what you need, focus on racing, be fit there, don't care about biking or gym or whatever. And I do that, and then summer comes and the weather's nice, and I end up doing too much. But I don't know if it's that way. That's my experience. But yeah, now it's not helped that I moved to Spain, because the weather is always nice. The cycling area there is amazing. So I'm cycling even more than in the past. I rather say to myself, I've done a little bit too much than not enough. But yeah, it's a fine line to control. And indeed, I've had periods where actually, in hindsight, 2 years ago, at the end of the year, I was in combination with also, for me, hypercar, you need to be as light as possible. So then often also not eating enough and training too much and traveling a lot.
Yeah.
Came a time I was tired, I was getting sick quicker and so on. So that's, for me, in my opinion, the difficulty in where you find the limit. It's not fun how much I can do, but still, being ready to go racing.
Yeah. I also think that we have a very different, I guess driving style, maybe not so much, but the way we drive, I do think we are very different. I think you are more like giving 110% of yourself to, let's say, if you want to drive 1 minute around the track, you will do 110%, and maybe I do it in 60% of effort, Like, I always feel like that in that area we are very different. I think this is also a bit related to how much energy you have to put into what you do. So if I would be Lawrence, I would for sure not have enough of training in my body to do a race, I think, because I just take it completely different. I think that's also a big part of why we're different, and also how everybody else is different in his own way.
Yeah. I've seen this with other drivers. I agree, because when I'm in the sims sometimes, or when I've tried like some sims, I'm like putting a lot of effort. And for example, a guy that I've seen put zero effort in his driving is Raffaele Marcello. I've seen him in a race simulator, like in a home simulator, and he's like he's falling asleep, and I'm like, what are you doing? And that plays a big role as well.
That is one of the, and it's something I tried to, a couple of years ago, I've noticed that as well, and tried to work on. But obviously, a big part of it is your nature, how you drive, and you can't change it all. But I do try and pay attention to that, because sometimes even I started to notice that in COVID, when I was doing sim racing, and I was in the sim, like sweating and being tense, and like, why am I tense? I'm on the sim. So yeah, it's a bit the nature of the beast, I guess.
Everybody's different in that.
But you take your training quite serious as well.
Yeah. But I've had it in the past as well, when I was doing Ironman 70.3s and stuff, arriving to a race weekend, and after FP1, like having a blackout nearly, and I'm thinking, how is this possible? I'm probably the fittest in the grid, and I'm having a
But you're also driving like quite tense then, or quite like I don't know how everybody puts their effort in as much as they do, but
yeah, I think I drive a bit tense, like normally. Like I feel sometimes I'm like grabbing the steering wheel harder than I should. I'm like, but I do focus sometimes on that, like thinking, okay, I need to take a step back. I don't need this amount of effort actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's everybody has this thing.
Let's go
Let's
to the
do
quick fire questions, because I think the movie of my daughter is almost finished, so it's the inside of the podcast. So 3 short questions with short answers. Proudest achievement you've had so far?
The Macau Grand Prix.
Fair enough.
Yeah, okay. Because you won a few nice things, but
Yeah, but that one, it was a standout. Like it was just, too special.
okay. What would be the achievement you still would like to achieve or get on the bucket list?
Nürburgring 24-hour.
Not an easy one.
Yeah. And I really...
It's not an easy one.
No, but you at least depends. I don't know. You still gonna do it next year?
Yes, but it's not official.
Okay. Well, then at
You-
least I'll for sure you will for sure be on a good.
You
You
will
have a
see.
good chance. Let's say.
If you can give any advice to your younger self, like 15-year-old Dani Juncadella, what would it be?
I would probably remind him of trying to focus more on himself rather than comparing yourself against too many people. That's something that I learned very late in my career, to focus on the things I can control and focus on myself instead of comparing constantly, because it's a sport where you're constantly comparing yourself, the lap times, the sector times, and I feel like I've done way better when I've just focused on what I can do and what I can improve.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
It's a good lesson. Good advice
Right.
for everybody listening.
Exactly. Exactly.
So-
And also a good thing is also to not give up, because I mean also what you said, Dani, that when you got, let's say, out of the Red Bull program, you probably also were a bit unhappy, and still you have a great career, and you're still not done. So I think also for people listening and stuff, to just always keep going, and to train doesn't stop until it's until it's broken, or how do they say it? I'm not so good at that stuff.
I don't think they say it like that, but I think you know what you mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for the time. Interesting story. And,
very nice.
Hope you enjoyed it. Now we need to come on your podcast in Spanish.
Yeah, I need to start inviting guests.
I can order food in Spanish so far, but that's about.
Yeah, but now that you live in Spain, you will count like another Spanish. So, but we would like to invite like some English speaking podcast people as well, because it helps growing it, and for sure one day you will get my invitation.
Okay, it's fun as well. It's generally fun to have these chats
it
with you and with others, and you learn. Even me, I learn something every episode.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Dani. Thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me, guys, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. Enjoy the holidays.
Exactly.
Yeah, you too. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.